Hello everybody, my name's Reevesy, you're watching Week of Geek, and today I want to speak to you about World of Warcraft, but specifically I want to dig back to the start of World of Warcraft and find out where did it come from, why was it such a big success, and why is it still so popular. So World of Warcraft is an MMORPG, which stands for Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game. It's essentially an RPG online where you can play with millions of other people. You fight as one of two factions, the Alliance or the Horde, and you fight each other. Occasionally those two forces will join together and take on a bigger threat that's threatening the existence of the world, threatening the existence of Azeroth. I guess that's the explanation for what World of Warcraft is, right? But that doesn't, to me, explain where it's come from, why it's such a big success when there's so many other MMORPGs out there. Because ultimately, World of Warcraft wasn't the first MMORPG, and it's definitely not the last. So what is it that made this game such a huge success when it launched, and why is it still going strong today? It might seem like I'm going off track throughout this video, but just bear with me because everything I'm saying is kind of making sense and coming to a point at the end. So let's start with the birth of the MMO, the massively multiplayer online genre. And to do that, I want to go back to the 1980s. In the mid-1980s specifically, around 1985, when people started developing these multiplayer user experiences.
Nowadays, you can actually play a real-time computer game against an opponent anywhere in the country. Wendy Woods tells us how.
This is the Island of Kismai, a Dungeons & Dragons type of game, and Michael Orkin, a statistician who's designed and played his share of games, is playing it for the first time with two other people 2,000 miles away in real time via the CompuServe network. This is an example of what's called a multi-user game. Several people can be online playing any one game simultaneously. They're not your arcade-type games with stunning graphics. Their visual display consists of the basic characters that can be sent across the phone lines to all types of computers.
It's different. It's kind of fun to do it this way. And if you're playing it by yourself, of course, you can just sort of fool around and do everything the way you want to do it. If you're doing it with a few other people, then they want to be doing things their way, and so you might, in fact, that's kind of fun too, I guess, if you get in conflicts with the people that you're playing the game with.
So during the 80s there were several multiplayer titles. These games concentrated on you experiencing gameplay from one place, playing with somebody else who is in a completely different area and not in the same room, which is typically how gaming was done before then. Now let's bear in mind that this was way before internet was in every single house on dial-up. This was before internet gaming, internet chatting, it was before any of that. So this was a huge deal, the fact that these developers have started making some games where you could play with other people and you could play with them at a completely different end of the country. It was huge. Now, to do that, you would go and play on a set system. You wouldn't have it on your computer, and you would pay a certain amount per hour. Some of them charged up to $12 per hour. And in the late 80s, early 90s, $12 is quite a lot of money to try and experience this. But you cannot get this multi-user interface anywhere else. So back then, it was probably worth paying it to experience it. Right? That's a big pull and a reason why somebody would want to experience gameplay in this way, which hasn't been done before. It's such a novel experience which people are really excited to try, which means they would pay that money. So listen, that's the point I'm trying to make here. From as early as 1985, developers were driving to try and get their games played by multiple users in different areas. There was a drive and a demand for people playing a game with somebody but not in the same room. And let's be quite frank, we're talking about World of Warcraft here. Those games are nothing like what we know of an MMORPG and nothing like what we know of World of Warcraft. So to get that, we need to step forward about 10 years into the 90s. That's right, so the 90s gave us bootcut jeans, friends, skateboarding on a mass, and MMORPGs. I think we owe a lot to the 90s, don't we, really? And specifically, I want to key into a few years of the 90s, and that is 1997 and 8. That's when a game was released which is called Ultima Online. So the maker of this first massive online game, Richard Garriott, coined the term MMORPG for himself to describe his game, Ultima Online. If you know anything about MMORPGs, you'll know about this game. I personally consider it, as I'm sure many others do, as their first experience as an MMORPG game playing with multiple users on the same screen as you. It was a top-down isometric MMO where you'd do quest, craft, and most importantly, meet loads of other people. And I mean loads of them. This game was hugely popular, and soon after its launch it had over 1 million players. And that was unprecedented. This was the biggest thing of the time. Like I say, 1 million players all playing from different locations. But again, even this game, which is such a staple in MMORPG history, is nothing like what we've come to expect from the genre. And definitely nothing close to what we'd expect from World of Warcraft. But with 1 million players constantly playing this title, you can see why game developers like Sony, Microsoft, and Ubisoft started focusing all of their attention onto this brand new genre, right? Okay, so here's where all my rambling starts to come to a head, and when I see all the points I'm trying to make come together. So thank you for sticking with me. Straight after Ultima, and when we start talking about the 2000s, we look at a second wave of MMORPGs, which all start to take shape and look very much like what we would consider an MMORPG today. You might know some of these titles, and for me, they were massive games. I played every single one of these and enjoyed aspects of every single one, and they've all had massive player bases, or still have massive player bases because they're still going. We've got Phantasy Star Online, Earth and Beyond, RuneScape, Dark Age of Camelot, Eve, and of course, EverQuest. There's loads more games that I can mention, but for me, these games left a huge impact on my life. They introduced me to a whole new way of gaming, and I was hooked. And they really started to make up what we think and what then became the typical MMORPG. And I'm talking about really finding the balance between efforts and rewards. Introducing rewards for your efforts as you leveled through and as you quested through these games. You'd always have something to work towards, and ultimately they would have you invest in hours and hours and hours, if not days, into this game, only to want to spend more days and more time to keep progressing your character. And that's what they were really good at. That's what MMOs are good at, and why it's the biggest selling genre and the most profitable genre that there ever has been in gaming, because it keeps people coming back, it keeps you hooked, and it keeps you working towards something. And I just want to focus on EverQuest for a second, because that was, before World of Warcraft, the most popular fantasy RPG. It'd have you questing for just one more rare item, or one more sword. Or it would have you going to defeat a big massive world boss with 30 other players across the world who at this point you're starting to consider as your friends. And you're starting to build a bit of a community. So this game for me was the first that really started to meet that demand which people wanted right back in the 1980s. They wanted to be able to play with a load of people while sat at your computer. In fact, people started scheduling their real life events around nights where they would go and do what's now known as a raid. They'll go and take down a big boss with 35 other people, and that would become a massive part of their lives. These video games were starting to shape people's lives as opposed to playing games as and when they could, because the developers got so good at capturing their audience and keeping on making them wanting to come back. That's what they do. That's what MMORPGs do. And for a lot of people from the years 2000 to 2004, that was a massive change to their life and something that they loved spending and investing their time in, so they could be rewarded with this ultra cool character with this great sword or this really great set of armor which they've finished off collecting by going and doing all these rare different things. Those elements were all there in MMORPGs, again up until 2004. But then in 2004, that's when everything changed. And what I'm about to talk to you about is why this game is such a huge deal in the gaming industry, and why it's really defined the MMORPG genre. In 2004, Blizzard Entertainment were doing what they do best. So they were taking a look and evaluating what was already on the market. They were looking at all the great things that all these other games had, and then they were starting to perfect them. Before we go any further, this is something that Blizzard is really good at. Just as an example, we've got Hearthstone, Heroes of the Storm, and of course Overwatch. None of these games that I've just listed, none of them are original ideas. They've taken from that genre and they've improved on it and perfected it and made it an incredibly polished product. And that's exactly what they did with the MMORPG genre when they started to make World of Warcraft. They started to look at what they could do better, what's already out there, and started to make the perfect recipe, the perfect formula, if you'd like, for this type of game. As an example, EverQuest was incredible for people who've experienced Dungeons and Dragons. It's really good for experienced RPG players. But if you were brand new to that genre and you tried to play this game, it was quite tough. There was quite a steep learning curve, especially for someone like me who wasn't as used to PC gaming as he was consoles. So quite challenging to get into this game, but once you're in it and once you're kind of close to the end game, it's unbelievable. It's just quite hard. That entry level was quite hard. And then RuneScape as another example. It was brilliant for grinding and improving stats, but the graphics weren't great and it wasn't that immersive in terms of story. It's been improved lots over the years, but back when I played it, you didn't really play it for the story and lore and the RPG setting. You played it to grind your stats and be the same as your mate, or maybe get a new set of armor or something like that. It was never because the world that you're in was really immersive. So thinking about all of that I've just covered, enter World of Warcraft. In 2004, the MMORPG version of an already vastly popular Warcraft, which is an RTS, a real-time strategy game, already had a massive following, continued the story and lore from those games, introducing a very easy to access, for the time anyway, a very easy to access for new players tutorial experience, and a very vast open world. It introduced everything that every other game was doing well, but made it easily accessible for people who weren't into that genre at all. And like I said before, they nailed it. They got this formula absolutely perfect through years of testing and alpha testing and beta testing, through years of squashing any bugs and making sure they've got a vast array of players testing this thing. They made what a lot of people consider, for the time anyway, the perfect, massively multiplayer online RPG. So to answer the question, why is it such a huge deal? Why is it the success that it is? Because Blizzard took everything that was good from other games and implemented it into this one. They then monopolized the market by drawing in new players through a user-friendly experience. And to top that all off, it was very quickly becoming the biggest selling MMORPG, so you had loads of people around you as well. You had a massive community. It was the most talked about game and biggest game at the time. So there's a massive chance you've heard about this game and want to kind of come and give it a try. So to put it simply, World of Warcraft was the most thought out, well produced game of its time. It was easy to access for everyone and anyone, and it showed as it very quickly became the biggest and most renowned video game of all time. Most, not all, but most of the expansions to follow only helped bolster the player numbers and helped keep hold of a large player base that they already had, whilst growing and introducing new players, all by just doing it better. Just by giving a reason for the people who played EverQuest, who played EVE, Anarchy Online, all of the other titles, a reason to go to this place because they just do it better. So this is slightly off topic, but I always call Blizzard the Apple of games developers. They're not doing anything new, there's nothing like revolutionary about what they're trying to put in place, but what they do give you is a very polished, excellent product, and you will probably not get that quality elsewhere. That's what Blizzard do. And then why is it still so popular? Well, again, I think it's simple from what we've heard, but Blizzard, the developers of the game, learn and they advance and evolve the game to match the current market and the current player base. If you was to Google about this game, a load of people will disagree with that because they remember this original version of the game. The fact of the matter is, Blizzard have evolved to the market and evolved to the games industry to make sure that their games are always relevant, making it easier for players. At the moment, the game's pretty easy compared to what it was when it launched, was a way to interact with the player base who haven't yet tried an MMO and don't want to come and invest all the time. Now they're catering more to casual players, and they've got some really hardcore stuff for the people who are dead interested in it at the end. That was never a thing before. All of these things are changing about the game because Blizzard will and always will look at the market and the gaming industry as well as their player base, and then make decisions based on those factors. So that's it. Hopefully for you it answers the question, what is WoW, where did it come from, and why is it such a huge success? I've not even touched on any of the story and lore that kind of comes into World of Warcraft. This is all about the game and how it was sold and how it was packaged and how it's been brought together from all these other individual games. But let me know what you think. Is there anything that I've missed? Am I being horribly ignorant to some facts and figures which I just don't know about? Leave a comment for me. And if you like this video, please make sure you give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel as well. We've got loads of stuff coming out all around different games, but with quite a lot of emphasis on World of Warcraft and Shadowlands. But if you don't fancy doing either of those, that's all good. Thank you very much for watching anyway. Like I said, my name's been Reevesy. You've been watching Week of Geek, and we'll see you next time.